The Constitution of India outlines a system of government for the states that is similar to the one used at the national level. This means that India has a parliamentary system both in the centre, the national government, and in the states. Part 6 of the Constitution specifically focuses on how the government operates in the states, including the articles from 153 to 167, which address the state executive. The state executive is made up of several important roles. These include the Governor, the Chief Minister, a group known as the Council of Ministers, and the Advocate General of the state. Unlike at the national level, there is no position called the Vice Governor in the states. The role is instead similar to the Vice President of India, which serves the central government. The Governor acts as the chief executive head of the state, but it is important to note that this role is somewhat ceremonial, much like the President at the national level. The Governor serves as a nominal executive head, meaning they hold the title and responsibilities officially, but their powers are largely limited by the Constitution. Additionally, the Governor functions as an agent of the central government, which means they have responsibilities that connect them back to the national administration. The role of the Governor is multifaceted. It includes performing duties that are both ceremonial and administrative. Typically, each state has its own Governor, but due to the 7th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1956, the same individual can serve as Governor for multiple states if necessary. This provision helps ensure that smaller or less populated states can still have governance without needing to appoint separate governors for each one. In conclusion, the state executive in India is structured similarly to the national executive, with the Governor at its helm but functioning in a more symbolic capacity compared to positions with more direct power, like the Chief Minister. Understanding the roles and relationships of these positions is vital for comprehending how state governments operate within India's federal system. The Constitution lays this framework clearly through various articles, ensuring that every aspect of governance is defined and regulated. Appointment of Governor in India. In India, the Governor of a state is not elected by the public like the President. Instead, the Governor is chosen by the President of India, who appoints him or her with a formal document that has the President's signature and seal. This means that the Governor is essentially a representative of the central government, but it is important to know that the Supreme Court has ruled, in the Hargobind Pant case of 1979, that the Governor's role is not a job under the central government. The office of the Governor is independent and separate from the central government's control. When the Indian Constitution was being drafted, the idea of directly electing governors through a vote was considered. The idea was that everyone of voting age could participate in this election. However, during the discussions in the Constituent Assembly, a decision was made to keep the current system where the President appoints the Governor. There were several reasons for this choice. Firstly, having a directly elected Governor could lead to conflicts with the state's Chief Minister. Since India follows a parliamentary system where the Chief Minister is the head of the government, an elected Governor might create unnecessary tensions. Secondly, if the Governor is just a nominal head of the state, then it wouldn't make sense to spend a lot of money and effort on his or her election. Thirdly, making the Governor an elected position would focus more on personal popularity rather than on qualifications or governance, which might not serve the country's best interests. An elected Governor would usually come from a political party and could become biased, making it harder to remain neutral. Additionally, if governors were elected, it could lead to polarization and separatist tendencies within the country, which could destabilize the political environment. The system of presidential appointment allows the central government to maintain certain control and oversight over state affairs, ensuring that all regions work cohesively under one unified framework. One major concern with direct elections is that it could create a leadership struggle during statewide elections. For instance, A chief minister might want his or her candidate to run for Ghana, potentially leading to choices based more on loyalty to a party than on merit. This could result in appointing someone not fit for the role because they are a lesser-known or second-rate candidate from the ruling party. Thus, instead of following the American model, where governors are directly elected by the people, India adopted a system similar to Canada's. In Canada, governors of provinces are appointed by the Governor-General, which is closer to how Indian governors are appointed by the President. In terms of constitutional backing, the appointment of a governor is defined under Article 153 of the Indian Constitution, which states that there shall be a governor for each state. Article 155 details that the governor of a state is appointed by the President, further establishing the framework for the appointment process and clarifying the role of the governor within the overall structure of governance in India. This setup ensures that the governor can fulfill their role effectively while maintaining the balance of power necessary for the stability of both state and national governance. The qualifications for appointing a governor in India are outlined in the Constitution, which specifies only two main requirements. Firstly, the individual must be a citizen of India, and secondly, they need to be at least 35 years old. These basic requirements ensure that the governor represents the nation and has a certain level of maturity and experience. Beyond these constitutional requirements, the Sarkaria Commission, which examined the relationship between the central government and the states from 1983 to 1988, offered additional recommendations to improve the selection of governors. One of the key ideas was that a governor should be a person of importance or distinction in some area of life, such as education, law, social service, or any other significant field. This is meant to ensure that the governor brings valuable experience to the role. Another suggestion was that the person appointed as governor should ideally be from outside the state where they will serve. This helps to maintain an unbiased approach and prevents a governor from having too many local ties, which could influence their decisions. The Commission also recommended that governors should not be people closely involved in the state's local politics. The idea is to have an impartial governor who can act as a stabilizing figure in the state's political landscape. Additionally, the Sarkaria Commission suggested that the governor should not have been too active in politics recently. This aims to avoid any conflicts of interest or perceptions of bias, especially if the ruling party at the center differs from that of the state. For instance, it is preferable not to appoint a politician from the ruling National Party to govern over a state led by a different party or coalition. To further enhance the selection process, the Commission recommended that the procedure for appointing a governor should include effective consultation with the state's chief minister. It suggested that amendments to Article 155 of the Indian Constitution should be made to formalize this consultation process. Currently, Article 155 simply states that the governor is appointed by the President of India. In this context, it is also helpful for the Prime Minister to informally consult with the Vice President of India and the Speaker of the Lok Sabha when choosing a candidate for the governorship. This process of consultation should be conducted discreetly and should not be seen as a strict constitutional requirement, but rather as an important step to ensure the appointment is appropriate for the state's political landscape. Overall, these qualifications and recommendations aim to ensure that governors are suitable and capable leaders who can act fairly and independently while representing both the central and state governments. Before a governor can start their work, they must take an oath or affirmation. This is an important promise that the governor makes to show their commitment to their new role and the responsibilities that come with it. The main points of the oath include three key commitments. First, the governor pledges to perform their duties faithfully and to the best of their ability. This means that they promise to work hard and be honest in their role. Second, they vow to uphold and defend the Constitution and the laws of India. The constitution is like the rule book for the country, outlining how the government should function and the rights of the citizens. Lastly, the Ghana agrees to dedicate themselves to the welfare and service of the people living in the state. This highlights their responsibility to improve the lives of the residents and work for their benefit. In India, the oath of office for the Ghana is administered by the Chief Justice of the state's High Court. If the Chief Justice is not available, then the seniormost judge of that court will step in to administer the oath. This procedure underscores the importance of the position and ensures that the Ghana's commitment is upheld in a formal and legal setting. The requirement for taking an oath is stipulated in Article 159 of the Indian Constitution. This article states that the Ghana shall, before entering upon his office, makes and subscribes to an oath or affirmation. This constitutional mandate ensures that all Ghanaians adhere to the same standard, promoting a sense of accountability and integrity in their office. Furthermore, any person who acts in the capacity of the Ghana, whether temporarily or in an acting role, is also required to take a similar oath. This ensures that anyone stepping into the role of Ghana, even if only for a short period, is equally committed to upholding the constitution and serving the people of the state. In essence, the oath taken by the Ghana is not just a formality, it is a declaration of their duties and responsibilities, reinforcing the values of leadership, public service, and constitutional fidelity in Indian politics. Conditions of office for the Ghana in India. The role of the Ghana in India is crucial as they serve as the representative of the President of India in each state. The Indian Constitution outlines specific conditions that define the office of the Governor. Let's go through these conditions in a simpler way to understand them better. Firstly, a person who is appointed as a Governor cannot be a member of either House of Parliament, the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha, or a member of the state legislature, the Vidhan Sabha or Vidhan Parishad. If they are a member and are appointed as a Governor, they automatically lose their membership in that house when they take up the Governor's position. This rule ensures that the Governor remains independent from political influences. A Governor cannot hold any other position that provides a salary or profit. This means they should focus solely on their responsibilities as a Governor without the distraction of other jobs. Regarding their living arrangements, a Governor has the right to stay in an official residence called the Raj Bhavan without needing to pay rent. This residence is meant for the Governor's use while they are in office. The salary and benefits for the Governor are determined by the Indian Parliament. In 2018, the Parliament increased the Governor's monthly salary from 1.10 lakh rupees to 3.50 lakh rupees. This significant raise reflects the importance of the Governor's role in the state government. If the same person is appointed as the Governor of multiple states, the payments they receive are shared among those states based on the division set by the President of India. This helps in managing the financial aspect of having a Governor oversee more than one state. Another important detail is that the Governor's salary and allowances cannot be reduced during their term. This provision ensures that once a Governor is appointed, their financial status remains stable throughout their service. In addition to these rules, the Governor also enjoys certain privileges and protections during their time in office. One of the key aspects is that the Governor has a form of legal immunity. They cannot be held legally accountable for actions taken as part of their official duties. This means that during their term, they cannot face criminal charges even for personal actions. However, if someone wishes to take civil action against them relating to personal matters, they must give a 2-month notice before proceeding. The provisions regarding the Governor's office are mentioned in various articles of the Indian Constitution, particularly under Articles 153 to 167. These articles define the role, powers, and responsibilities of the Governor, ensuring that the position operates effectively and maintains a balance within the state's governance. In summary, the conditions of office for a governor are designed to preserve the integrity and independence of the role, while also providing certain protections and privileges. The governor acts as a vital link between the central government and the state, contributing to the overall functioning of democracy in India. Term of governor's office in India. In India, a governor is an important official for each state and generally serves for a period of 5 years. This 5-year term starts when the governor first takes the oath of office. However, it's important to know that this term is not guaranteed. The governor serves at the pleasure of the President of India, which means that the President has the power to remove the governor or ask them to resign at any time. A governor has the ability to resign whenever they choose by sending a resignation letter directly to the President of India. A landmark decision in 1981, known as the Surya Narayan case, clarified that the President's authority regarding a governor's tenure cannot be questioned in court. This means that once appointed, a governor does not have a guaranteed job for a set number of years and can be removed without any specific reason stated in the Constitution. The Constitution does not specify any particular grounds for a governor's removal by the President, which has caused political changes in the past. For instance, in 1989, the National Front government led by VP Singh asked governors appointed by the previous Congress government to resign. Some governors stepped down, while others were allowed to stay in their positions. A similar scenario occurred in 1991 when the Congress government of P.V. Narasimha Rao replaced 14 governors who were appointed by earlier governments. Moreover, a governor can be transferred from one state to another by the President and can continue serving in the new state for the duration of their remaining term. Even if a governor's 5-year term is officially over, they can remain in office until a successor is appointed and takes over. The key reason for this is to ensure that there is always a governor in place and to prevent any interruptions in governance. In situations where a governor is unable to perform their duties, such as in the event of their death, the President has the authority to make alternative arrangements. For instance, a temporary appointment can be made from the Chief Justice of the state's High Court to fulfill the governor's responsibilities until a new governor is appointed. These provisions regarding the governor's term and office are outlined in the Indian Constitution, specifically in Article 153 to Article 167. These articles detail the appointment, powers, and responsibilities of the governor, ensuring that the governance structure at the state level remains stable and functional. In summary, while a governor is expected to serve for 5 years, their tenure is flexible and can be altered by the President. Understanding these rules helps clarify the unique role of governors in the Indian political system. Powers and functions of the governor. The governor is an important figure in the Indian political system, serving as the representative of the President of India in the states. While the governor has several powers akin to those of the President, there are notable differences. The governor does not have powers related to diplomacy, military issues, or emergency situations. Instead, the powers and functions of a governor can be categorized into 4 main areas: executive powers, legislative powers, financial powers, and judicial powers. Executive powers. The governor holds significant executive powers, which include the ability to appoint the chief minister of the state. Following this, the governor also appoints other ministers on the advice of the chief minister. This appointment process is governed by Article 164 of the Indian Constitution, which emphasizes the role of the governor in ensuring that the government is formed according to the Legislative Assembly's majority. Additionally, the governor appoints various officials and heads of the state administration, such as the Advocate General and the State Election Commissioner. In the realm of administration, the governor plays a crucial role in maintaining law and order within the state. The governor can also summon and dissolve the state legislature, exercising authority under Article 174. These actions help ensure that the state's governance aligns with constitutional provisions. Legislative powers. In terms of legislative powers, the governor has the authority to summon and prorogue the sessions of the state legislature, which consists of the Legislative Assembly and, in some states, the Legislative Council. This function is vital as it helps regulate the timetable of legislative business. Furthermore, the governor addresses the first session of the state legislature after each general election and at the beginning of the first session of each year, providing a speech that outlines the government's agenda. Additionally, the governor's approval is necessary for bills passed by the state legislature to become law. According to Article 200, the governor can either give assent to the bill, withhold assent, or return the bill, if it is not a money bill, for reconsideration. This power acts as a check on the legislative process at the state level. Financial powers. The financial powers of the governor include overseeing the budgetary process of the state. Before the state legislature can discuss and approve the budget, it is presented by the governor, underscoring the importance of the governor's role in fiscal matters. According to Article 202, the budget must be laid before the legislature. Another key financial responsibility includes the appointment of the state's Finance Commission. This commission is crucial as it advises the governor on the distribution of financial resources between the state and local bodies. The governor thus has substantial influence over how financial resources are allocated within the state. Judicial powers. The governor's judicial powers include the authority to grant pardons and reprieves, similar to the president's powers at the national level. Under Article 161 of the Constitution, the governor can remit punitive sentences or suspend sentences awarded by the state courts. This aspect highlights the governor's role in providing justice and mercy in certain cases. In summary, the functions and powers of the governor encompass a broad spectrum, which spans across executive, legislative, financial, and judicial domains. While the governor plays a foundational role in the governance of a state, it is essential to understand that these powers come with the responsibility to act in accordance with the Constitution and maintain the state's democratic processes. Understanding these roles helps citizens appreciate the significance of this position within India's political framework. Executive powers of the governor in India. The governor plays a crucial role in the functioning of the state government in India. The executive powers and responsibilities of the governor are outlined mainly in the Constitution of India, particularly in Articles 153 to 161. Let's break down the main functions of the governor in simpler terms. To begin with, all official actions carried out by the state government are discussed and done in the name of the governor. This means that while the ministers and the chief minister are responsible for running the government, the governor represents the state in a formal capacity. One of the key powers of the governor is to create rules that detail how official documents and orders are to be validated and authenticated. This means the governor can decide the procedures to be followed for various government actions, ensuring they are done properly. The governor also has a significant role in appointing important state officials. For instance, the governor appoints the chief minister, who is the head of the government, and other ministers. These ministers serve at the governor's pleasure, which implies that they hold their jobs as long as the governor is satisfied with their performance. In specific states like Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, and Odisha, the governor must appoint a tribal welfare minister. However, Bihar is excluded from this requirement due to the 94th Amendment Act of 2006. Another important appointment made by the governor is that of the Advocate General, who is the state's legal advisor. The governor also decides how much the Advocate General will be paid. Like the ministers, the Advocate General serves at the pleasure of the governor. The governor has the power to appoint the state election commissioner as well. This official oversees the conduct of elections in the state. However, the removal of the state election commissioner can only happen in the same way and under the same conditions as the removal of a high court judge. This provides a level of protection for the role, ensuring independence from political pressures. Additionally, the governor appoints the chairperson and members of the State Public Service Commission. It's worth noting that unlike other appointments, these officials can only be dismissed by the President of India, not by the governor. The governor also has the authority to request information from the Chief Minister regarding the administration of the state and any legislative proposals. This ensures that the governor remains informed of the activities and decisions of the government. Moreover, the governor can ask the Chief Minister to present matters that have been decided by individual ministers but have yet to be discussed by the entire Council of Ministers. This provides a system of checks and balances within the state's governance structure. In cases where there is a need for more centralized control, the governor can recommend to the President of India to impose a constitutional emergency in the state. This often happens when there is a failure in the constitutional machinery, allowing the President to take over the governance of the state. During such emergencies, the governor has expanded executive powers, acting as an agent of the President. This means the governor can make direct decisions regarding the administration of the state, allowing for a smooth governance process during critical times. Lastly, the governor also acts as the chancellor of state universities and is responsible for appointing vice-chancellors. This role is vital for the management and functioning of higher education in the state, ensuring that academic standards are maintained. In summary, the governor of a state in India possesses significant executive powers that allow for effective governance. These powers are defined by the Constitution and include making appointments, creating rules for administration, seeking information, and recommending actions to the President. This complex role ensures that the governor can both represent the state and work with elected officials to navigate governance challenges. Legislative powers of a governor in India. In India, the governor plays a crucial role in the state legislature. The governor is not just a representative of the President of India, they also have several important powers and responsibilities. These powers allow the governor to be an active participant in the legislative process within the state. One of the primary powers of the governor is to summon or prorogue the state legislature, which means they can call the legislature to meet or end its session. The governor can also dissolve the state legislative assembly, leading to new elections. This is significant because it ensures that the legislative assembly functions when necessary and is held accountable to the public. The governor also addresses the state legislature at the beginning of the first session after general elections and at the start of each year. This address helps set the agenda for the state government and informs the legislators and the public about the government's priorities and policies. Another important function of the governor is sending messages to the legislature. These messages can relate to bills currently being discussed or other matters of legislative importance. The governor plays a critical role in maintaining communication between the executive and legislative branches of the state government. If both the Speaker and Deputy Speaker of the State Legislative Assembly are unavailable, the governor has the power to appoint any member of the Assembly to oversee the proceedings. Similarly, if both the Chairman and Deputy Chairman of the State Legislative Council are absent, the governor can appoint someone to preside over the Council's activities. This ensures that the legislative process continues smoothly even in the absence of key officials. The governor also nominates 1/6 of the members of the State Legislative Council. This is done by selecting individuals who have special expertise in areas like literature, science, art, cooperative movements, or social service. However, a significant change took place in 2019 with the 104th Constitutional Amendment Act, which removed the provision for nominating a member from the Anglo-Indian community in the State Legislative Assembly. When it comes to the disqualification of members of the state legislature, the Ghana consults with the Election Commission to make these decisions. This power is crucial for maintaining the integrity and functioning of the legislature. After a bill is passed by the state legislature, it is sent to the Ghana for approval. The Ghana has several options. They can give their assent, choose to withhold assent, or return the bill for further consideration, provided it is not a money bill. If the Assembly passes the bill again, with or without changes, the Ghana must approve it. However, there are times when the Ghana must reserve a bill for the President of India's consideration. This is particularly true if the bill jeopardizes the position of the State High Court or falls into specific categories, such as being against constitutional provisions, in conflict with the directive principles of state policy, or being of national importance. The Ghana's authority in these situations is guided by Article 200 of the Indian Constitution. Furthermore, the Ghana has the power to issue ordinances when the state legislature is not in session. These ordinances are temporary laws that the legislature must approve within 6 weeks of reassembling. This ordinance-making power is significant as it allows for immediate legislative action when the assembly is not available. However, the Ghana must use this power judiciously. A landmark ruling by the Supreme Court in 1986, the D.C. Wadhwa case, emphasized that the repeated use of ordinances without seeking legislative approval could be unconstitutional. The court pointed out that during a certain period in Bihar, the Ghana had issued numerous ordinances, extending their validity without legislative scrutiny, which raised serious concerns about the misuse of this power. Finally, the Ghana has the responsibility of laying reports from the State Finance Commission and the State Public Service Commission, as well as the Controller and Auditor General concerning the state's accounts, before the state legislature. This is important for ensuring transparency and accountability in the functioning of the state government. In conclusion, the legislative powers of the Ghana are vital for the functioning of the state legislature. Through their various powers and responsibilities, the Ghana ensures that the legislative process remains effective and responsive to the needs of the state and its citizens. Understanding these powers helps us appreciate the balance of authority and responsibilities between different branches of government in India, as detailed in Articles 153 to 219 of the Indian Constitution. Financial powers of the Ghana. In India, the financial powers of the Ghana play an important role in managing the state's finances. These powers are defined mainly under Articles 203 to 207 of the Indian Constitution. Understanding these responsibilities helps to recognize how the Ghana influences financial decisions and governance at the state level. Firstly, the Ghana is responsible for ensuring that the annual financial statement, also known as the state budget, is presented before the state legislature. This document is crucial because it outlines the government's proposed expenditures and estimated revenues for the year. Without the Ghana's approval, this fundamental financial statement cannot be laid before the Legislative Assembly. Thus, the Ghana acts as a gatekeeper for the state's budgetary process. Another key responsibility of the Ghana is that money bills, which are specific types of legislation related to taxation and expenditure, can only be introduced in the state legislature with the Ghana's prior recommendation. This means that any law related to raising funds or spending public money needs the Ghana's nod before it can be discussed or approved by the legislature. Additionally, the Ghana can make recommendations regarding demands for grants. A demand for a grant is a request presented to the legislature asking for approval of a specific amount of money to be allocated for particular departments or projects. This reinforces the Ghana's role in steering financial decisions within the government, as no demand can be made without their recommendation. In emergencies or unexpected situations, the governor has the authority to make advances from the contingency fund of the state. This fund is set aside to allow for quick financial action in unplanned scenarios, reflecting the governor's function as an important decision-maker when unforeseen expenses arise. Moreover, the governor is tasked with constituting a finance commission every 5 years. This commission reviews the financial condition of local self-governments like panchayats, rural local bodies, and municipalities, urban local bodies. The aim is to ensure proper distribution of financial resources among these entities and to assess their financial needs, efficiency, and fiscal responsibility. This function underscores the importance of local governance and the need for equitable financial distribution across different administrative levels. In summary, the governor's financial powers and functions are significant in the context of moderating the state's finances, ensuring transparency, and enabling adequate resource allocation through various constitutional provisions. These checks and balances help maintain accountability within the state's financial governance framework, guiding the overall economic health of the state. Understanding the judicial powers of the governor in India. In India, the governor plays an important role in the state's legal system. The governor has several judicial powers and responsibilities that are crucial for maintaining law and order in the state. Let's break down these responsibilities and discuss them in detail. First, one of the key powers of the governor is the authority to grant pardons, reprieves, respites, and remissions of punishment. This means the governor can reduce or cancel punishments that were given to individuals convicted of crimes. The governor can also suspend, put on hold, or change the sentence given to a person for any offense. This power allows the governor to show mercy in special cases and is guided by Article 161 of the Indian Constitution. Additionally, the governor holds the responsibility of recommending the appointment of judges in the state's High Court to the President of India. This consultation process is vital for maintaining an independent judiciary and ensuring that qualified individuals are appointed to uphold justice at the state level. Another important role of the governor is to oversee the appointments, postings, and promotions of district judges in the state. The governor makes these appointments after consulting with the state's High Court, which plays a crucial part in maintaining the quality and integrity of the judicial system. Moreover, the governor also has the power to appoint individuals to the judicial service of the state, excluding district judges. This appointment is also done in consultation with the State High Court and the State Public Service Commission. This means that the governor ensures that the best candidates are chosen for the judicial positions in the state, helping to maintain a robust legal system. In addition to these responsibilities, the governor has other significant powers, including the veto power, ordinance-making power, and the pardon power. These powers allow the governor to have a say in legislative matters, help in immediately addressing urgent situations through ordinances, and exercise mercy in specific cases. For instance, the veto power lets the governor reject bills passed by the state legislature. This is significant because it helps check the powers of the Legislative Assembly and ensures that laws are in the best interest of the people. The ordinance-making power allows the governor to make laws when the Assembly is not in session, which is important for swift governance. However, this power is temporary, and any ordinance must be approved by the Assembly when it reconvenes. Overall, the judicial powers of the governor play a critical role in the functioning of the state's legal system. These powers not only involve overseeing judges and court systems but also include the ability to impact laws and offer second chances to convicts. By understanding these powers, we can appreciate how the governor helps to maintain justice and order in the state. These roles and powers of the governor are crucial in ensuring that the state government functions smoothly and fairly, contributing to the overall stability and justice in Indian democracy. In India, the process of passing ordinary bills involves both the president at the national level and the governor at the state level. An ordinary bill is a type of legislation that can be proposed by any member of parliament or state legislature and must go through certain steps before becoming law. Once an ordinary bill is approved by both houses of parliament, the Lok Sabha, House of the People, and the Rajya Sabha, Council of States, it is sent to the President for approval. The President has three possible actions regarding an ordinary bill. Assent, the President can approve the bill. If this happens, the bill becomes an act, which is a law that everyone must follow. This is outlined in Article 111 of the Indian Constitution. Withholding assent, the President may choose not to approve the bill. When this occurs, the bill does not become law and effectively ends. Returning for reconsideration, the President can return the bill to Parliament for further consideration. If the bill is passed again by both houses with or without changes and sent back, the President is then required to assent to it. This means that the President cannot refuse it a second time. Regarding state legislation, when a bill is passed by the state legislature, it is submitted to the governor, who has four options. Assent, just like the President, the governor can give his or her approval. If this occurs, the bill becomes law. Withholding assent, the governor can decide not to approve the bill, which would mean the bill does not become law. Returning for reconsideration, the governor can send the bill back to the Legislative Assembly for another look. If the Assembly repasses it, the governor must then approve it. This action demonstrates that the governor has a limited power known as a suspensive veto, which means the bill can be delayed but must eventually be considered again. Reserving for presidential consideration, the governor may also reserve the bill for the President's approval. If the President takes action on the reserved bill, the governor no longer plays a role in the process. If the President chooses to return the bill for reconsideration and it is passed again, it must be sent back to the President, who will then decide whether to approve it. This complex process ensures that both the national President and the state governor have a say in whether legislation becomes law. Articles such as Articles 107 to 111 of the Indian Constitution outline these procedures for parliamentary bills, ensuring a clear framework for legislation. It emphasizes the system of checks and balances within Indian governance, where different branches and levels of government interact in the lawmaking process. Understanding the role of the President and Governor in money bills in India. In India, a money bill is a special type of legislation that deals with financial matters such as taxes, public spending, and government loans. According to the Indian Constitution, specifically Article 110, the Parliament has the authority to introduce and pass money bills. Once a money bill is approved by both houses of Parliament, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, it is sent to the President for approval. The President has two main options when it comes to a money bill. Assent to the bill. If the President approves the bill, it becomes law, known as an act. The President typically gives approval to these bills since they are introduced in Parliament with prior consent. Withhold assent. If the President decides not to approve the bill, it is rejected and does not become law. Importantly, the President does not have the power to send the bill back to Parliament for reconsideration, which is a unique aspect of money bills. Additionally, when a money bill is reserved by a governor for the President's consideration, the President again has the same two options regarding the bill, withholding assent or granting assent. In this scenario, the President's decision is final, and he/she cannot return the bill for review. On the other hand, the role of a governor regarding money bills at the state level is somewhat different, as described in Article 207 of the Indian Constitution. When a money bill is passed by a state legislature, whether it has one house, unicameral, or two, bicameral, it must be presented to the governor for approval. The governor has three choices. Assent to the bill, similar to the precedent, if the governor approves the money bill, it becomes law. Withhold assent, if the governor does not approve the bill, it is rejected and does not become law. Reserve the bill for the president. In this case, the governor can choose to send the bill to the president for further consideration. Once this action is taken, the governor does not have any further involvement in the bill's progress. When the governor reserves a money bill for the president's assent becomes the primary requirement for the bill to become law. If the president gives assent, the bill is enacted, and the governor's prior approval is no longer necessary. In summary, both the president and the governor have crucial roles in the legislative process involving money bills in India. While the president mainly focuses on bills passed by the parliament, the governor oversees those from state legislatures. Their choices are pivotal to determining whether these financial proposals transition into law, influencing fiscal policy and government operations at both the national and state levels. Understanding ordinances in India. In India, ordinances are special laws that can be made by the president and the governors of states when the parliament and state legislatures are not in session. Let's break down how this process works for both the president and the governors. Role of the president. The President of India has the authority to issue an ordinance, but certain conditions must be met. Timing of ordinance. The President can issue an ordinance only when neither House of Parliament is in session. This means that if both houses are on a break, or if only one of them is working, the President can still create an ordinance. Necessity for immediate action. Before issuing an ordinance, the President must be convinced that urgent circumstances require immediate legislative action. This is to ensure that the ordinance is necessary and justified. Scope of power. The power to issue ordinances is aligned with the legislative power of Parliament. This means the President can only create ordinances on subjects that Parliament itself has the right to legislate on. An ordinance has the same authority as a law passed by Parliament. Legal limitations. Ordinances issued by the President are subject to the same limitations as parliamentary acts. If an ordinance includes provisions that Parliament cannot legally enact, those parts of the ordinance will be invalid. Withdrawal. The President has the power to withdraw an ordinance at any time. Advisory requirement. The ordinance-making power is not at the President's discretion. The President must act on the advice of the Council of Ministers, led by the Prime Minister. Parliamentary oversight. After Parliament reconvenes, the ordinance must be presented before both houses. If Parliament does not approve the ordinance within 6 weeks after it resumes, the ordinance will cease to be in effect. Rescinding ordinance. The ordinance can also become invalid if both houses pass resolutions against it. Role of the governor. Similarly, the governor of a state has powers to issue ordinances under specific conditions. Timing for states. The governor can issue an ordinance when the state legislative assembly, in a unicameral system, or both houses of the state legislature, in a bicameral system, are not in session, or even when only one house is active. Necessity for immediate action. Just like the President, the governor must also be satisfied that urgent circumstances exist which require immediate decisions. Scope of power. The governor's ordinance-making power is also linked to the legislative power of the state legislature. Therefore, the governor can only issue ordinances on matters that the state legislature can legislate on. Legal limitations. An ordinance from the governor carries the same weight as a state legislative act, but it must not contain provisions that the state legislature cannot enact. Withdrawal. The governor can also withdraw an ordinance whenever necessary. Advisory requirement. Similar to the President, the governor's ordinance-making power is not autonomous. It must be exercised based on the advice of the Council of Ministers, headed by the Chief Minister. State legislative oversight. After the state legislature reconvenes, any ordinance issued must be presented before the assembly or both houses if it's a bicameral legislature. This ordinance will remain in effect for 6 weeks after the assembly's session unless it is disapproved earlier. Presidential instructions. The governor cannot issue an ordinance without instructions from the president in certain cases, such as if the provisions require prior president's approval for introduction or if an act would have been invalid without the president's assent. Relevant constitutional articles. The power of the President to promulgate ordinances is detailed in Article 123 of the Indian Constitution, while the Governor's ordinance-making power is mentioned in Article 213. These articles establish the legal framework and conditions under which ordinances can be introduced, ensuring that both the President and the Governor's powers are clearly defined within the constitutional context. Overall, ordinances serve as immediate legislative measures in extraordinary circumstances, ensuring that urgent issues can be addressed even when the legislative bodies are not actively meeting. However, they are designed to be temporary solutions that require subsequent approval from the legislative assemblies. The President of India has some important powers when it comes to dealing with sentences given to individuals convicted of crimes. According to the Constitution of India, specifically Article 72, the President has the authority to grant a pardon, which can mean various things like reducing a sentence or even changing it altogether. This power extends to any crime under central law, meaning laws that apply to the entire country rather than just one state. One of the unique powers the President holds is related to death sentences. The President is the only person who can completely pardon someone who has been sentenced to death. While he or she can change the sentence to something less severe or commute it, the final decision to fully pardon lies only with the President. This is a crucial aspect of mercy in the justice system, providing a chance for forgiveness in extreme cases. Additionally, the President also has the power to intervene in cases handled by military courts, known as court-martials. This means that if a military personnel is convicted, the President can also grant a pardon or modify the punishment handed down by these courts. On the other hand, the Governor of a state also has certain powers, but they are a bit different. According to Article 161 of the Indian Constitution, the Governor can also grant pardons, reprieves, or remissions for offences related to state laws. However, the Governor does not have the authority to pardon a death sentence. Even if the state law allows for a death sentence, only the President can grant a full pardon. Although the Governor cannot completely pardon a death sentence, he or she can still reduce or change the sentence in some way. In summary, while both the President and the Governor hold significant powers regarding the justice system, their authorities are defined differently in the Constitution. The President has wider powers, especially in cases involving severe punishments like death sentences, while the Governor's power is limited to offences under state laws. This establishes a clear hierarchy and ensures that serious penalties like the death sentence are primarily governed at the national level. Constitutional position of the Governor. The Constitution of India outlines a parliamentary system of government both at the national and state levels. In this setup, the role of the Governor in a state is largely ceremonial, meaning that the Governor acts as a symbolic leader rather than a person who holds significant power. The real power and authority in the state lie with the Council of Ministers, which is led by the Chief Minister. This means that while the Governor does have certain responsibilities and powers, they are mostly exercised with the assistance and advice of the Council of Ministers. However, there are specific situations where the Governor can act independently, without the advice of ministers, which is referred to as acting in his/her discretion. To understand the Governor's role, we should look at some important articles in the Constitution, Articles 154, 163, and 164. Article 154 states that the executive power of the state is held by the governor. This means that the governor is officially the head of the state's executive branch and can exercise these powers directly or through subordinates following the rules laid out in the Constitution. Article 163 indicates that there should be a council of ministers led by the chief minister to assist and advise the governor in performing his/her duties. However, there are instances where the governor must make decisions on their own, which the article acknowledges. Article 164 declares that the Council of Ministers is collectively responsible to the State Legislative Assembly, which means that if the Assembly does not support the Council of Ministers, they must resign. This idea of collective responsibility is a key aspect of parliamentary democracy, ensuring that the government is accountable to the legislators elected by the people. The governor's constitutional position is different from that of the President of India in two significant ways. First, while the governor can occasionally act independently, the President is typically bound to follow the advice of the Council of Ministers. Second, after the 42nd Amendment to the Constitution in 1976, the President must always adhere to the advice of ministers, but this binding rule does not apply to the governor. If there is ever a question about whether a certain decision falls under the governor's discretionary power, the governor's decision is final and cannot be questioned. The Constitution provides the governor with specific situations where they may exercise their discretion. These include reservation of bills. The governor can reserve certain bills for the President's consideration. Recommendation for President's rule. The governor can recommend imposing President's rule in a state, which means the central government takes control of the state's governance temporarily. Union territory management. If the governor is also overseeing an adjacent union territory, they can act there as well. Royalty payments. The governor helps determine payments from the state government to certain tribal councils in Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram. In addition to these explicit cases of discretion laid out in the Constitution, governors also have what is known as situational discretion, or the ability to make decisions based on current political conditions. Situational discretion comes into play in several scenarios, such as Chief Minister appointment, when no political party has a clear majority in the Legislative Assembly or when a sitting Chief Minister passes away without a clear successor. Dismissal of ministers. The governor can fire the Council of Ministers if they cannot prove their majority support in the Legislative Assembly. Dissolving the Assembly. If the Council of Ministers loses its majority, the governor has the authority to dissolve the Assembly. Moreover, the governor has certain special duties that must be completed as per the President's directions. Although the governor is expected to consult with the Council of Ministers, they ultimately have the final say in these matters, which might include establishing development boards for regions in states like Maharashtra and Gujarat, managing law and order in states like Nagaland and Arunachal Pradesh, ensuring social and economic advancement for various sections of the population in Sikkim. Thus, the governor's role is quite multifaceted. They serve as both the constitutional head of the state and as a representative of the central government. As the constitutional head, the governor symbolizes the authority of the state, while as a representative of the central government, they ensure that federal laws and policies are implemented at the state level. This dual responsibility reflects the federal nature of India's political system, wherein states retain substantial autonomy even as they function under the broader umbrella of the national government. Issues in the governor's functioning in India. The role of the governor in Indian states has raised various concerns over the years, particularly highlighted by the Sarkaria Commission on Center-State Relations from 1983 to 1988. These concerns remain relevant and continue to provoke discussions about the functioning of governors in India. One of the primary issues is the selection of the Chief Minister. When an election occurs and one party or coalition wins a clear majority, appointing a chief minister is generally straightforward. However, complications arise when no single party has a majority. In such cases, it is the governor who must use their judgment to decide on the chief minister. The convention is to invite the leader of the party or coalition with the most significant support in the Legislative Assembly to form the government. This process helps avoid accusations of unfairness or favoritism on the part of the governor, which is critical for maintaining democratic integrity. In situations where the current government loses majority support due to resignation or a defeat in the assembly, the governor must also determine who is capable of commanding a majority among the various parties. Different methods have been employed by different governors to assist this, ranging from relying on lists of supporting members from various claimants to physically counting the number of supporters present. Another pressing issue is the criteria for removing a chief minister from office. It is clear that if a chief minister loses the majority in the assembly, they cannot continue in their role. Generally, they are expected to resign or confirm their support in the legislature. However, the criteria for dismissal by the governor have been inconsistent, leading to confusion and potential misuse of power. The dissolution of the Legislative Assembly by governors also varies significantly. Typically, a chief minister with majority support can advise the governor to dissolve the assembly, and this advice is usually expected to be followed. Yet, there have been instances where governors have deviated from this norm, refusing to dissolve assemblies even when advised by a chief minister who lost majority support, while others have complied, thus creating inconsistencies. Governors have also faced scrutiny regarding their recommendations for precedence rule under Article 356 of the Indian Constitution. In various instances of political turmoil, some governors have swiftly suggested invoking precedence rule without sufficiently exploring all constitutional options to stabilize the government. This situation has raised concerns over the impartiality of the governor's advice, as they have often been accused of acting with bias, and their approach has lacked uniformity across different states. The reservation of state bills for the precedence consideration has sparked controversy as well. At times, governors have chosen to reserve certain bills, which can lead to disputes over their authority and the implications of their decisions for state legislative processes. Nominations to the Legislative Council have also been a point of contention. The discretion exercised by governors in nominating members has brought about accusations that such discretion is not warranted, as the norms of accountability and representation should prevail. This criticism extends to their role as the Chancellor of universities, where it is argued that they often act outside the bounds of their constitutional duties. The laws governing universities typically specify that the governor serves as Chancellor, which provides them with certain powers. However, these powers should ideally align with the advice from the Council of Ministers, leading to another layer of complexity in their functioning. In summary, the issues associated with the role of the governor in India reflect ongoing concerns about political neutrality, the use of discretion, and the consistent application of constitutional principles. The Indian Constitution, including Articles 153 to 167, outlines the powers and responsibilities of the governor, emphasizing the importance of impartiality and adherence to democratic processes. Addressing these challenges is essential for strengthening democracy at the state level and ensuring that the governors serve their intended role effectively.